Welcome to an episode of Founder in the Chair. I'm your host, Vina, and today my guest is an empowering spiritual mindset coach. She's on a mission to help women heal from mental and emotional suffering. After enduring 19 years in a narcissistic marriage, she overcame the shadows of psychological and emotional abuse that once eroded her mind, body, and soul. Through her journey of healing, Sandy transformed her pain into power, using her experiences to guide others in their healing journeys. Her renowned 12-week self-love and confidence program enables women to reclaim their confidence and embrace their divine feminine power. Recently, she made a bold statement by participating in the Sisters of Strength United to End Abuse Catwalk at the Fashion Brunch, created by Anisha Vasani Creates, showcasing resilience and solidarity among survivors. I'm super excited and honoured to introduce Sandy Phgura. Welcome.
Hello, thank you, Vina.
How are you today?
I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous.
I don't know what's going to come out today. Who knows?
That always happens in these conversations, which is why we're just going to let it come
go
out.
with the flow.
So, Sandy, what is it truly like to experience narcissistic abuse, and how did it affect your sense of self and reality during that time?
Okay, so I always describe narcissistic abuse being like carbon monoxide. You don't know it's occurring, and it's silent but deadly. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, everything is great. It's a whirlwind of a romance. Mm-hmm. You get the term love bombed. So it's all very fast, it's very intense. Narcissists are very, very charming, they're very charismatic, and you very easily fall into that. And for me, we had a love marriage. Mm-hmm. So we met at college, I was 19, a very naive 19-year-old. Mm-hmm. Brought up in a very traditional Sikh family where you didn't have boyfriends. Mm. So that wasn't, the guy that you probably dated would be the guy that you marry.
Yeah.
So when I started college, I wasn't even into guys, to be honest with you. I did genuinely go to college to study. But we met, and he was just very, very persistent. And they seemed to find a way of getting in. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was a very spiritual type person, even from young. Mm-hmm. And what particularly attracted me was that he was vegetarian, he didn't drink, and he realised that a way to connect to me, I suppose, was through spiritualism. Mm-hmm. So we would speak for hours about different religions and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to get married at some point. My sisters already got married. Mm-hmm. I saw people around me moving afar and away from their families. And I thought, okay, well, he's local. Mm. He's Punjabi himself. Mm-hmm. So he's probably a good suitor. You do think about a lot of things like this when you're younger, which really did kind of contribute towards why I continued my relationship with him. Looking back, there were so many red flags. Mm. But like I said, you're very naive. I grew up in a very happy household. I didn't see any forms of abuse. Okay. The only kind of abuse that I think I would have recognised is if I had a black eye.
Yeah.
So the physical abuse that you kind of see on TV or in Bollywood films. Yeah. But other than that, I would never recognise. I didn't know that abuse comes in other forms. So for me, it pretty much started as soon as we got married. Mm-hmm. The verbal abuse, the putting me down, making me feel that wasn't good enough. And it's all very subtle, right, to the point where you don't even recognise it. Then it's the trying to isolate you from your loved ones, making out that they're the villains, they're the perpetrators. And then it kind of went on to psychological games. So there would be games like withholding love. Mm-hmm. So again, it's making me feel like I've done something wrong. And again, it happened over years. And for me, I was very much in love, and I took my marriage very, very seriously. I went in it thinking we were in it for life.
Yeah.
And but over time, it was very obvious because he had 4 older sisters, so he was the only son.
Okay.
So there was a very obvious cultural narcissism, which I now call it, where his mum kind of put him on a pedestal amongst the other siblings, and he just ran the household with all the rest. What he says went.
Yeah.
And his parents made it very clear to him that they lived for him, and whatever he wanted, he got, even from a young child. So he was never used to anyone saying no to him.
Right.
He was always used to my way or the highway. So for me, again, being a South Asian woman, growing up, again, my household was very much about my mum taking the back seat for herself, looking after everybody else. So I always kind of knew my pecking order, as they call it, within my in-laws, that I kind of came last.
Yeah.
And there were a few times when things did look very unhinged to me that I did try to raise in the family.
Okay.
But then it was always that way of saying, well, you know what he's like. You know, it's just the way that he is.
Okay.
So for many years, I just took it that he was quite immature and that he will grow out of that behaviour. But if anything, it got worse as the older we got. And then we had our child 10 years later. But before that, I think a lot of my self-worth, I really did take from my career. I was very strong in my career, very ambitious. But looking back, a lot of that was because I was overcompensating what I didn't have at home. And again, you don't have time to reflect on any of this stuff. So I never really was aware of how I was being, or that I was even in a narcissistic abuse. I still didn't think I was in a abusive marriage.
You just thought it was normal.
I was completely, because obviously I've never had a boyfriend before.
Yeah.
He was my first love, so I don't know anything different.
Yeah.
I just thought all families are going to be like my family. So when you go into a different family, I, again, just very much took them on as my family. So I never badmouthed them to anybody. I really did treat my in-laws as my parents, because I saw my mum do that with her in-laws. They had a very healthy relationship. And for me, I was just very gracious, shall I say, in the whole of the 19 years. Was I probably too nice? Probably. Was I a people pleaser? Absolutely. And I always strive for being that perfectionist, whether it be the daughter-in-law, the wife. And for me, I constantly try to fix myself. I was trying to get them to see my worth. I seeked for their validation.
Yeah.
I wanted to be liked by my 4 sister-in-laws.
Yeah.
But I always felt very different. I felt like that they just wouldn't let me in. So there's very much a me versus them.
You were the outsider.
I was the outsider.
The outlaw, as they call it.
The outlaw, yeah. And so I lived like that for many years. But again, I just took that as that's just a daughter-in-law thing, right? It happens.
Especially in those days.
In those days.
I know what era you're talking about.
Yeah, so I got married in 1998.
Okay.
Met my ex in 1995. And, it was very romantic Bollywood back then. It was all the Yash Chopra movies were out, and you kind of get swept up in all of that.
Yeah.
And you always...
Bollywood has a lot to answer for, right?
It does, because in Bollywood, you always see the scenario, don't you?
Yeah.
Of the beginnings of the first love, and there's always that middle bit of being some form of drama, turmoil of some kind. But then the ending, everything's always sorts itself out.
Yeah, happily ever after.
So I was waiting for the happily ever after.
Oh.
I was hoping for that. I was yearning for that. I was striving for that. And I was very loyal to that. I'm a very loyal person, that I wasn't ready just to give up on a marriage.
Yeah.
And my way was, let's fix us, let's fix me. Because obviously there was nothing wrong with him, of course. It was all me.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that really came into it was the blame culture. And I really took that on. The key thing with a lot of narcissistic relationship is that you'll find that they often match up with an empath, someone like myself who's highly empathic, and that has a lot of supply, as we like to call it, in terms that, you know, I'm very bubbly, very outgoing, very optimistic, very smart when it comes to my career, and he liked that about me because it made him look good.
Right.
And then it got to a point where I started making quite a bit of money in my mid-20s. I became one of the top consultants in the whole company by the age of 26.
Wow.
And I started to see him being quite threatened by that. And again, that's, I think, when he started to diminish me more and really ramped up the verbal abuse. I mean, he would call me all types of names. And looking back, I'm like, why did I take that? But I did. And the emotional abuse. And the weird thing is, I even remember saying to myself, it's okay that I'm his emotional punch bag because I'm his wife. And there's that saying, isn't it, that they will always do that to the ones that they love most. So I took it that he must love me. Your nearest and dearest. So I was like, okay, well, he does love me. He obviously, I'm his safe space. He trusts me.
Wow, you were really justifying it, weren't you?
This is it. And I know many viewers that will listen to this who are in those specific narcissistic abuse. You can't explain it.
Yeah.
And there's a real misunderstanding that only weak women get abused. And being a life coach myself, I know that's not true.
Yeah, because you were so strong at work.
So strong at work. Oh my gosh.
Like nobody would imagine that's happening at home to you.
No. And like I said, I didn't even recognise it was happening to me. This is it. This is how we justify behaviours. And especially for me, knowing that our culture is very patriarchal. So then I made excuses for it. I allowed it. I think it's just how he was being brought up, which doesn't justify any form of abuse, but that was my way. And also, it was my marriage. And I'm not someone that gives up very easily. Right. So if I can fix things at work, I'm sure I can fix my marriage. And it always goes back to, you still love them. And that in itself is quite warped, because there's a whole trauma bond that plays out in a narcissistic relationship where they give you like crumbs of love, and then they withdraw, and then they just, when you think, okay, you can't take it anymore, and they know that you're pulling away, they will then suddenly love bomb you again.
Right.
And so there's this whole push pull that you're in, and that's what causes the trauma bond, and keeps you almost addicted, because your body's in a state of high cortisol, highly stressed, but that then becomes your new normal. You're constantly treading on eggshells, always trying to appease them so that they don't suddenly just explode. And you just get better ways of doing it. And then when you do try to address it, again, they blame you. And the worst thing about it is you internalise that over time, and you do start to think it is you. So my escapism really became my work.
What were you doing? Was it like
I was in recruitment.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started in recruitment when I was 22, and then very ambitious, like I said. Again, it's my worth, I thought, was through how much money I make.
Yeah.
So the more money I make, the more worthy I am of a person. And that's what really catapulted me to work really hard. So by 26, I was a top consultant. By 27, I had a corporate burnout where I had a nervous breakdown. Like my system just completely shut down.
Wow.
Looking back, I thought maybe it was just work.
Yeah.
But now knowing that it wasn't, it was the abuse that was happening at home, me losing myself, losing my sense of self, to the point where I didn't even recognise myself. I had to take 3 months off work to pull myself back together again. And I had a better work-life balance. I became smarter at work as opposed to working hard.
Yeah.
But I didn't change who I was at home.
Okay.
And the more you try and be strong, the more they just ramp up, and it became a lot psychological abuse.
Okay.
And that's when it really got confusing towards the end, because it was almost like he lived a double life, which I still to this day can't explain it. He would obviously speak to people that were even my nearest and dearest and tell them complete fabrications of what's happening in our life. Like he said that we were living separate lives, separate bedrooms, which we weren't. But people believed it, because why would a man tell you that?
Yeah.
You know, why would
they? Yeah.
So, and he's so charming, has a very soft voice. And why wouldn't you believe someone like that? So what I did discover in the last 3 years of our marriage, people thought that I was the one that was living a lie, and that I was pretending we were okay when really clearly we weren't. But I didn't know any of this until I started having people that were even close to me start to turn on me.
Oh, God.
And I'd walk into like rooms, like we'd have like family functions or something.
Yeah.
And I remember just walking in, and it's weird because your instinct, your body really does scream the truth.
Yes.
And I'd walk into a room but feel like the outsider in the room.
Yeah.
And I'd feel like there's a big elephant in the room of something that I don't know. And I later discovered that's what it was, that all these people who were my so-called nearest and dearest thought that, you know, we were living this completely different life behind closed doors that I wasn't even aware of.
Okay, wow.
So a lot of confusion.
Yeah. So
distortion.
How did you get to the decision then to finally leave? And
So-
what was the ultimate, if there was one ultimate thing that actually made it happen, what was?
My son.
Okay.
So he was 5 now. And the last couple of years, the abuse got worse, because I think my ex couldn't take the fact that now we've got a son and having to balance everything with him too. And for me, it was, again, I started to sort of, the word narcissism came into my life in 2011, it was barely mentioned then. And I remember, I don't know how it came to me, but I remember looking at it thinking, oh my gosh. And it was like it slapped me in the face. I was like, that is me, that is me, that is me. But again, I was in denial. I didn't want to admit it. So I said, no, that can't be him. So I put it to one side. But then the seed has already been sowed by that point. So over those 2 years, I started observing situations. And then I started really realising that he's living a double life. And every time I tried to call him up on it, he would gaslight me and make out that I'm the crazy one. And it was in 2013, so 2 years later. I did try to leave a few times, by the way, in that time, but he'd always cry and
like
be
your
very
heartstrings.
remorseful at my heartstring, make me feel guilty.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you know, look, we can make a new change. And they know how to pull those heartstrings. And obviously the guilt kicks in. You feel guilty for them. You feel sorry for them. So I always went back in hope. I wanted that happy family.
Yeah.
And the more years you invest in it,
Yes. Yeah.
the more it's harder to get out. And so, yes, it was in 2013 when I started having my closest people. I think by this point he thought he was very clever and went to my real closest people to see. He thought he could obviously manipulate them against me as well. It was his way of isolating me from everybody. And then a few people then came to me and said, do you realise he's saying this? And that's when I started to see that pattern. And once you start to see, it's very hard to unsee.
Yeah.
So I then plucked the courage to think, you know what, I have to leave this, because my son, just where I thought this was normal, and it clearly isn't, I don't want this to be normal for my son. I don't want him to think this is what love looks like, this is what a marriage looks like, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. So I one day plucked the courage to say to him, I'm done. I said, I know what's going on. I know what you're saying to everybody outside. That's now going to become our reality.
Right.
And I just was so strong in that moment. I look back and that's probably one of my proudest moments. I remember that speech so clearly. It had so much conviction.
Yeah.
And I stuck to it. And I did try to stay in the family home until we worked something out.
Yeah.
But you can't work out anything with a narcissist. They're always 5 steps ahead, and they never have your best interest at heart. So in the end, it got worse, and we were taken by the police in the end, me and my son. 12:30 one day at midnight, we went to my parents' house. And that was it. And then that's when you have a whole new chapter of the divorce proceedings, custody. I mean, it went on for 3 years. And anyone knows when you're divorcing a narcissist, it's incredibly hard. And you're already at your most vulnerable. You're lost, you're confused, you don't even know, you can't even make sense of the marriage, let alone try to articulate it in court.
Yeah.
And
3
you can't
years.
co-parent with them.
No.
There's none of that. There's always the games.
Yeah.
It's always about exerting their control and their power.
Yeah.
And they will use the kids to do that. The thing is, you forgive, but you don't forget.
No. But it makes you stronger.
100%.
So how do you now support others who are navigating their healing journeys after experiencing similar abuse to what you went through?
So it's really, really important to do the inner work. You don't realise how your internal system is completely violated, completely blocked, clogged up. And for me, I did 8 years of healing. So I left in 2014. I mean, I still do healing even to up until this day. But it took me years just to really get my sense of self back. I had to really uncover so much of the self-neglect. And it's really about taking key responsibilities for yourself, accountability. And that's where the healing journey really starts, is what was it about me that attracted someone like that? And then why did I stay in it for as long as I did? Why did I allow someone? And, you know, you come up with your own answers. I didn't have much self-worth. I loved him more than I loved myself. I put his worth, his needs before myself. I had zero boundaries. And if anything, if he said jump, I'd be like, how high? And then it was all about me discovering of being that having the good girl syndrome and being conditioned to be like that. And what does it mean suddenly to be in your own autonomy and directing your own life and me being my own person? What does that look like? Start to kind of rediscover all of that. And then you start to really go into your own power as a woman, beyond being a mum, the wife, the daughter-in-law, the
Beyond
daughter,
the labels.
all the labels. When you strip that all away, I'm like, who do I want to be? What do I want to make a stand for? What do I want to represent? So, because I did that all myself, when I then became a life coach in 2000, I just knew that there were so many women out there that was suffering, whether it be psychologically, mentally, physically, emotionally. And it doesn't have to be just from abuse. It could just be from burnout. We're so overgiving that we lose ourselves in the process of life. And that we just come to a place where we're just unfulfilled. There's a gaping void within us that we don't know how to reach that and feel fulfilled, have a purpose. So that's what I started doing. And I then put together this 12-week program. It works. It works I've not had one person it hasn't worked with yet. And it's a step-by-step program where we just like dismantle ourselves, go to the true essence of who we really are. And then we build a life by our own design. And it's incredibly powerful. And I really find it's an injustice that it's not just about surviving life. It's about thriving life. That's what I'm all about. And that's what I want for every woman out there.
Love that. So what advice would you give to younger Sandy about dealing with challenges of narcissistic abuse?
Oh, gosh. If I had a daughter, I would probably teach her that, look, there are not so nice people out there. And her self-worth, and that she's perfect the way that she is in all her imperfection, and that she's no more important, she's no less important than a boy, for example, and for her to have a voice. I lost my voice. I never actually believed my voice was powerful as soon as I got married. I was finding my own maternal home, but as soon as I got married, that was it. I was like, okay, well, I don't have a voice. Let me just please and be the good
the good girl syndrome, as you said earlier.
The good girl syndrome. All that kept coming up. And for her to say, look, don't strive to be good, but be kind. But this whole good thing, it can weaken us on so many levels. And just teach her about self-love. For me, everything starts and ends with self-love.
So that's what you tell younger Sandy as well.
Yes.
Thank you. So I would love you to tell that camera how to get hold of you and about a little bit how to sign up for your 12-week programme.
Yep. So I'm Sandy Phgura, and you can get hold of me on Instagram, which is Sandy with a SANDY PHGURA, and Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. And simply DM me and I can tell you about the programme. And I often do free masterclasses as well. So if you are interested in that, let me know and I can put you on the list.
Thank you. Free masterclasses, great way to get into your world.
It is, absolutely.
Thank you.
And they're amazing.
I've seen some of them online, so yes, really good.
Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Founder in the Chair. Please do remember to like, follow, share and subscribe from wherever you are listening or watching. Thank you so much.